Kim Jong-un of North Korea, who is obviously a madman who doesn't mind starving or killing his people, will be tested like never before. It's the latest in a series of potentially dangerous verbal volleys.
Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime.
Last night, North Korea's leader took aim at the president personally, warning, "I will surely and definitely tame the mentally deranged U.S. dotard with fire." Dotard, a disparaging term for a senile senior. Still, it's not those words, but North Korea's threat to test a hydrogen bomb over the Pacific that's raising alarm bells.
All of our military options, as the president has said, is on the table.
So far, North Korea has conducted all of its nuclear tests in underground tunnels. And the last time a nuclear weapon was tested in the Earth's atmosphere was in 1980, when China fired a ballistic missile into a desert. Experts say if North Korea were to take such an action now, the results could be catastrophic.
The North Koreans are playing with fire here. The danger is if North Korea misfires, if they can't control the test, they kill thousands of people.
If North Korea launched a bomb, Pentagon officials say under one scenario, advanced radars and satellites all over the world would detect the launch, giving the U.S. the military options to intercept it or shoot it down before any radioactive material could do harm. But there are no guarantees.
North Korean Foreign Minister Ri Yong-ho basically delivered the warning while here in New York that Kim Jong-un would have the final say on whether to detonate that hydrogen bomb over the Pacific. He calls it the highest level of hardline countermeasure in history. Now, let's talk history here in North Korea. So far, they have conducted 6 nuclear tests. All of them have been underground, never beyond its own borders. First of all, can they pull this off?
Julie, I think they can pull it off. The question is, what happens if they do? Because keep in mind, if you're talking about launching an ICBM, putting a hydrogen bomb on it, and then lobbing it into the South Pacific, that's a huge geographic area. But we have to presume, if you just pull a map out, that missile would have to probably go over Japan. It could potentially even go over Guam. It would go over a lot of space. The danger of something going wrong is immense. Keep in mind, the North Koreans have not perfected this technology yet. There's a high probability that there could be an error, a tracking error. There's so many different problems that can happen. And then imagine if that missile went down over South Korea or Japan armed with a hydrogen bomb. That is the most dangerous and escalatory thing the North Koreans can do.
Yeah, and just to put in perspective what a hydrogen bomb is, there's the atomic bomb, which is the bomb that we the U.S. dropped over Hiroshima. The hydrogen bomb, basically, you're looking at 10 tons versus 10,000 kilotons. The magnitude effect of this would be devastating for our environment if it were to actually fall into the Pacific. But instead of letting his foreign minister do the crazy talk for him, Kim actually came out, had his own direct words for President Trump, which actually led all of us to Webster Dictionary, because he called Trump a mentally deranged dotard who is unfit to hold the prerogative of supreme command of a country. Now, it's interesting because shortly after Kim's statement, Twitter tossed the question to Merriam-Webster asking for dotard's definition. And then Webster tweeted, Kim Jong-un calls Trump a mentally deranged U.S. dotard. Searches for dotard are high as a kite. Okay, so if you haven't looked it up, I have for you. And here's the definition of a dotard. It's a person in his or her dotage. What the heck is dotage? So then I looked that up, and that means a state or period of senile decay marked by decline of mental poise and alertness. I don't even have words. Should we be worried?
I think we have to. I mean, what I'm really nervous about here, Julie, is we're descending into really uncharted waters with North Korea. We have been through many different crises with North Korea. If you go back to 2012, 2013, if you go back to the 1990s, you go back to the Cold War, the actual threat of the North Koreans to do an atmospheric test of a hydrogen bomb is unprecedented. Nobody does atmospheric tests of nuclear weapons anymore for a very simple reason. You're spreading radioactive fallout potentially all over the planet. You're going to have lots of people who are going to end up getting cancer, having all sorts of thyroid problems, because radioactivity spreads globally through the oceans, through the winds. It's terrible.
It's no shocker North Korea is responding this way. We could have all predicted this one, considering President Trump this week threatened to destroy North Korea if provoked. But to that, Kim responded to Trump's remarks saying this, that Trump convinced me rather than frightening or stopping me that the path I chose is correct and that it is the one I have to follow to the last. He also described the president as a rogue and a gangster fond of playing with fire. How would Pyongyang conduct a nuclear test over the Pacific? And then ultimately, what impact would it have specifically for those people living on the West Coast who are watching this back and forth rhetoric and are thinking and praying that this doesn't actually happen and scared?
Well, what they could do is, I mean, it's a question of do they have the range and do they have the guidance systems to go that far? Because obviously the South Pacific is a huge geographic area. So they would have to pick a place on the map essentially that's depopulated, that there's no islands, that there's no native populations there. But the challenge with all of this is, as we know, radioactivity spreads all over the planet. And this is why nobody does these type of tests anymore. So we have to be concerned.
We haven't had an atmospheric test of this sort since October 1980 on the part of the Chinese. I guess the big worry, sir, you know better than I, is that it can cause a great deal of electronics disruption. It could affect the electronics in planes flying in the vicinity. They could literally drop out of the sky.
Prime Minister Abe.
In the last 3 weeks, 2 times North Korea launched ballistic missiles, 2 times going over Japan, and they conducted 6 nuclear tests, and the scale of the test was beyond the scale of Hiroshima bombs, more than 10 times. The scale of the nuclear test was 10 times more. This is intolerable, outrageous act. Thanks to Donald's leadership, we now have the summit meeting between Japan, US, and Korea. So our unity and solidarity, the strength thereof, could be presented to North Korea. This meeting is indeed quite significant. I'd like to thank Donald's leadership. Recently, UN sanction was adopted unanimously, including very strict sanctions, and I'd like to thank the efforts of the UN ambassadors from the United States. And further efforts are needed. And in this context, Donald just referred to signing of the executive order, new executive order. So we are going into the new stage of pressure from the viewpoint of exercising stronger pressure, new pressures. I welcome the new sanction measures of the United States, and I'd like to offer my heartfelt support for that. Bearing in mind those measures between the 3 countries, we will have the collaboration so that we will move toward the abandoning of nuclear weapons and nuclear program by North Korea, and we'd like to lead into the next action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. We are also going to be discussing trade transactions and trade deals with Japan and with South Korea, and that'll be very important, but this is something that obviously will take precedent. So thank you all very much for being here. We appreciate it. We'll see you later. Thank you.